Vannacht you as Fadcherugus Shiaght Laa. She Fiona McArdle Mish. I'm Fiona McArdle and I'd like to welcome you to Shiaght Laa. In Shiaght Laa this week, Claire and Cute Show, Dayton Alior Lea You. Some diary dates for you, some musical events coming up this week. As Luna J. Irish Lior Edarashunach Fiescan Shawl, and the launch of a special double edition of a prestigious international journal focusing on the Manx Gaelic. There are two contrasting concerts taking place, both starting at 7:30 this evening, Thursday the 13th of August, one in Port Erin and the other in Douglas. In St Catherine's Church in Port Erin, the parish of Russian's series of summer concerts continues this evening with John and Karen Elliott and friends. Admission is free and the concert starts at 7:30. There will be refreshments available after the concert and there will be a retiring collection. The emphasis there, with John and Karen Elliott and friends, will be on song. Meanwhile in Douglas, there's the opportunity to enjoy the sound of brass. As part of the Isle of Man Arts Council's Arts in the Arcade initiative, a summer season of music is well underway in the Villa Marina Arcade in Douglas. This evening, Thursday the 13th of August, Ramsey Town Band will be playing, starting at 7:30. Admission to all the concerts in the Arts Council summer season of music is free. The Villa Marina Arcade has been used as a venue for those summer concerts since 2009. And after this evening's concert with Ramsey Town Band, there will be another band travelling in to play at 7:30 on Tuesday evening, the 18th of August, when you'll be able to enjoy the sound of the Castletown Metropolitan Silver Band, the Mets.
There are concerts happening elsewhere as well, and on Friday the 14th of August at 7:30, the Institute in Laxey plays host to 3 singer-songwriters who tell stories in songs tinged with folk, country and Americana. Joe Martin makes a return to the Institute, a singer from Chipping in the Forest of Bowland in Lancashire, but he has an international career, including taking his songs to appreciative audiences in Nashville. Joe Martin will be supported by 2 singer-songwriters from Liverpool, Katie Nicholas and Kyle Oak. Tickets for that concert are £15. That's at the Working Men's Institute in Laxey this Friday the 14th at 7:30. The following evening, Saturday the 15th of August, Katie and Kyle will be playing for an acoustic evening in the Peel Centenary Centre. That'll again be starting at 7:30 and tickets for that concert are £12. Also, starting on Saturday the 15th of August, will be the first of a free music event, North Quay Live, and that's for the Manx Grand Prix and Classic TT. And it'll be taking place, well, as the name suggests, on the North Quay in Douglas, with music starting at 6:30. There'll be another 2 long weekends of North Quay Live to tell you about here in Shiaght Laa, and that'll be next week and the week after.
There's another musical diary date, which I'll give you later. For Joshua Fishman, rugged as Trogachons Philadelphia, as car Ulyuan tre ega sa skol, rennis Juderas Chinga Yiddish. Na Sanma hegan olu skol, hure came on Shanachas. Henke de ve meinster on Shikleg, as hure oluacht on Shikleg Sheshol. Ve gol her lesh is Juderisen on Yiddish, carne blinten show. Henke de ve na olu at kust of wil, as lie van soroliacht ege, chicken shachada Sheshol je Shingachen. Screw peberen insach de chengach as ilchengach, as McKeown kumma benten rish chengachen. McKeown an acht for the chengachen gol egg, as Margethen McKeown sesen de stappel parel, as de chrenjacha aviocha ons chengachen. Benten rishen gilk vaninach, Dair en olu shore sakreri, says Joshua Fishman, treve jichen an acht van chenga gol egg. Dere best ned madrel ons Nike jeg, ke jegas tree feed. As vaslai grey der au ejen en loreders jerry, Jane Gilk. Na Sanma hug UNESCO kunta Jane Gilk, de ve maru. Achterby, was shen greinich a petchen vo she vonskol de her scroonen, das UNESCO. Red vad gre, de rawad ginsacha da holiorod ons a skull, true de gilk. Lug shen, hug UNESCO, lesh, stjach rona no, red vad prowl and stare de heilshacha. As nish tan chingya lorit se von skull, golfo enem, gilk avjochet, no gilk. In 1932, Irish academic T.F. O'Rahilly wrote in a preface to one of his books, "It is perhaps too much to expect that Manx, that Cinderella of Gaelic tongues, should ever attract many students." However, since T.F. O'Rahilly, there have been Kenneth Jackson, Robert Thompson and George Broderick, and now Dr Christopher Lewin of the University of Edinburgh and Dr Erin McNulty of University College Cork, who were both Manx-speaking academics, bringing the language into their researches. And Manx has attracted the attention of a number of other academics, to such an extent that in Yn Chruinnaght recently, there was the launch of a double edition, numbered 298 and 299, of the highly respected International Journal of the Sociology of Language, a special edition focusing on the Manx language. This is the official part of that launch with Chris Lewin and Erin McNulty.
We have at least two of our authors, not including and us, the editors and authors here, and we're expecting one more, and we have Professor Salabank online as well. All right. So this is the launch event for this special issue of the International Journal of the Sociology of Language, which is one of the most prestigious academic journals of language revitalization, sociolinguistics, and related subjects. It was founded by Joshua Fishman a couple of decades ago. Many of you will have heard, I'm sure. And this issue was co-edited by Erin McNulty and myself, and we have, I think, 7 articles, and the introduction. So, and you'll be glad to hear the whole issue is available free online, but we do have a few copies here as well.
So just to repeat some of the things that Christopher has said, it's obviously a leading social linguistics journal, and the issue itself is kind of like, it's probably best to think of it as kind of a book with lots of related chapters by different authors, which brings together several academic articles, around 7 or 8, around the theme of Manx revivals. So we wanted to, when we thought about doing the issue, when we first thought about doing it, we wanted to combine different author perspectives, so both people who are like Manx-speaking academics, like Christopher and myself, academics who work on other minoritized languages, and also people who are language practitioners working with Manx in a more practical sense in the Isle of Man. So that's what the issue does, it brings all of those kind of different sort of roles together. And it also covers many different areas. We've got articles around language policy, language variation, language in the political economy, applied linguistics, so kind of things like community projects that involve the Manx language, language ideologies and attitudes, and also language revitalization, which kind of underpins the whole thing. And yeah, as Christopher mentioned, it's available for free online. We've got the link there if anyone would like it. Feel free to send us a message and we can send it to you. Otherwise, it's very easy to Google if you just Google the title of the issue, or scan the handy QR code which I have made in advance. And we've got some physical copies available today. We might have to give priority to the authors themselves because the journal didn't send them any, but there might be some left over. And there'll also be one in the Culture Van and Library and the Manx Museum Library as well if you're local and you're able to access that.
Okay, so why is this issue important, and why did we decide to set about putting it together? Well, we're all here to celebrate the Manx language and the other Celtic languages this week, so it's a big thing here, but in the wider world, Manx really remains understudied, despite its great relevance for a range of academic disciplines, including linguistics and Celtic studies, as well as for on-the-ground language revival movements for whom Manx is an important example. So the issue, among other things, highlights the importance of Manx research for academics, practitioners, and language policy specialists working both in the island and internationally. And it will perhaps be especially relevant to those working in revived language settings, so languages that don't have traditional native speakers anymore. Not going too much into controversial definitions there, but and also island settings and small state settings.
Yeah, and as well, it also highlights specifically the within a Celtic language context, I think broadly in terms of connections to Irish, Scottish, Gaelic, Welsh, Breton, Cornish, the relevance of Manx for those kind of contexts, as well as minority language contexts more broadly afield as well. So, you know, think of things like Hawaiian or Te Reo Māori or anything like that. And also, crucially, makes Manx research more accessible to those scholars who are less familiar with the language. You don't need to know the entire lore behind Manx to be able to find something in the issue which will be relevant for your own language or your own area of study. And crucially, it underscores that Manx linguistics is important for its own sake, as Christopher and I have dedicated our careers so far to trying to prove. Like all languages, Manx is one of those who has very unique features that enhance our scientific understanding of how human languages work, and therefore, as this issue argues, it deserves to be studied in depth for that reason alone, if nothing else.
And then we called the issue Manx Revivals, or the Revivals of Manx. We got a little bit mixed up with which version we were going to go with, and I think both versions, if you look carefully, are in there somewhere, but never mind. But we thought there are very many different words, a lot of them beginning with revive, revitalize, and so on, that can be applied to language movements and have been applied. But I think the revival or the revival is probably the most common term in the Manx context, but it might have different understandings of what exactly that means. There's also different time periods, so you can trace revival movements of various kinds or moments in Manx history going back at least as far as the 18th century. Some of the collection of Manx folklore and folk songs, the Finis Ocean ballad and things like that, back in the 70s, 60s, which was also closely tied to the sort of flowering of Manx literature at the time. And then if you go forward about 100 years, you start getting antiquarian movements and cultural revival movements, and then going into the 20th century, a slightly more militant movement to actually revive the language as a spoken language. So we sort of wanted to include those different periods and perspectives. There's also the question, what does it look like to different speakers, like older people, children, younger people, people who have moved to the island for whom this is adopting a culture, people who are returning to their roots as they would see it. How do academic understandings of language revival compare to practical applications, and what different understandings are there? And how can we tie in language revival to other types of political, social and cultural revivals? How does language revival in the Manx context compare to other countries? So this week, of course, we're comparing a lot to our Celtic neighbours, our Gaelic and Celtic neighbours, but we might want to look further afield to other small islands, other places around the world that have indigenous languages. And how, as I mentioned, how does revival relate to other terms? Are they synonyms or are they different? Is there tensions between different understandings of revitalization, reawakening, reclamation, reconstruction, and so on?
Yeah, and another question to ask is, why do this now? And I think this is a really pivotal moment for Manx research in general, in that we're currently seeing quite a marked increase in interest in Manx, both in people doing research on it and also people's desire to fund research on it or get interested in research in a way that maybe hasn't been in the past, and kind of building on the momentum of sort of all of the research that's come before. And also from a kind of language policy and planning perspective, in terms of like, what do we do with Manx in the Isle of Man? The bringing back into community use of a language which had previously fallen out of it is kind of something that's still very rare globally at the moment. And the Isle of Man and the Manx language movement serves as like a kind of model or sort of case study, guinea pig case for many language communities in similar situations. So it's really important for people to be able to read about this kind of situation from multiple different perspectives, academic and otherwise. And from a research perspective specifically, it's like Manx has a lot to say about what actually happens to language when we try and do a language revival movement almost from scratch, right? There's like the kind of a situation which we don't know much about in terms of linguistic theory at all. And also how communities actually respond to it. What do communities do in these kind of situations, sociologically? So it really brings together the kind of linguistics and the sociological perspective in this issue. So I think it's really a pivotal moment for Manx research that we can get this off the ground now.
And this interest in Manx research has been demonstrated quite recently by successful funding grants that both myself and Erin have participated in, invited conference talks, publications, public engagement with Manx research through podcasts and other media. And it's hoped that this issue will result in future collaborations with those working in comparable language situations, as well as serving as a launch pad for future research into the language.
All right, yeah, and just to highlight some of the contributions, or indeed all of them, there's the introduction, which is by Dr Chris Lewin and myself. We've got Dr Fiona McArdle and Ruth Kegan-Gell having a contribution around Manx language for all, community cooperation and creativity in the 21st century. We've got Dr Benno Chiali from Aberystwyth University talking about the neoliberal capitalism and the political economy and language revival in the Isle of Man, that kind of thing. There's me there, and I was talking about how we can learn about what beliefs people have around the language through the kinds of grammatical structures that they use and what people think about when they think of good ways to speak Manx and that kind of thing.
Then we also have a contribution from Professor Tycho Hifranain from Galway, this might be of particular interest to those here this week, at Pan-Gaelicism and the perception of the Gaelicness of Manx in the revivalist founder group, so the relationship to Irish and Scottish Gaelic. We have Nicola Toombs from Manx National Heritage with a contribution about digitising Manx language recordings, Manx National Heritage and the British Libraries, unlocking our Sound Heritage project, which was a project that used volunteers to help catalogue some remastered sound recordings of including recordings of Manx native speakers, and which are now available online. And then there's me. I'm currently at the University of Edinburgh, constructing traditional Manx, the persistence of native speaker models in post-shift revitalisation. So that's slightly jargony, but basically I'm looking at how do people conceptualise, I suppose, what good Manx is, as Erin said, in a situation where there's no native speakers, but where the native speakers loom large as historical figures and as people that you can in some sense access their language through recordings and transcriptions and their writings and so on, and how that affects how the language is taught and learned and spoken and used today. And then finally, as a kind of summing up and to the whole issue, Professor Julia Salabank from SOAS, University of London, with a look at models of language revitalisation around the world, processes and outcomes, which is really a very good overview of the state of the art of language revitalisation studies at present, with Manx as a sort of focal point running through that as well, but with a lot of comparisons to other language communities.
Yeah, and obviously as we kind of mentioned before, we hope that this special issue will be something of a springboard for future research into Manx kind of social linguistics, thinking about some questions that we might still need to cover, which haven't really been talked about, in terms of what does it mean to speak Manx? What implications does that have for who we count as a speaker and who we don't, or whether we make those distinctions at all? Thinking about the relationship between the Manx language and a Manx national identity or an Isle of Man community identity, what does that mean and how does the language fit in there? Thinking about the places and the ways and the context in which people actually use the language, like where is it spoken most, who is it spoken most by, in what context and to what degree. A big one is, how does language acquisition work in Manx? How do people actually learn it? What's going on in people's brains when they actually learn the language, which in a non-typical context? And also thinking about the impacts that language policy making efforts have had on the language, and thinking about what potential future policy and legislation interventions might be wanted by the community, might be recommended by people who work in this area. That hasn't really been discussed that much in the literature, which kind of needs to be. And also, obviously, thinking about the comparative aspect. How do all of these things that are happening in the Isle of Man compare to other jurisdictions? What similarities and differences are there, and what impact has that had on the language and its community?
And then other things that we might want to look at in the future include the impacts that Manx language activities have had on the language community and the wider island community. How is Manx represented in the island's linguistic ecology and linguistic landscape, perhaps? How is Manx impacted by wider societal and economic issues? So, I don't know if there's pressures on housing and young people find it difficult to stay here. How's that impacting the future of the language, and so on? What insights can Manx give for other sleeping languages undergoing revival? How is Manx speech and writing shaped by community beliefs and language ideologies, and so on? And how can Manx texts and maybe recordings show how the language has changed over time? So a very wide range of issues still to research. So that brings us to an end of the sort of our brief presentation. And thought we'd now invite the speakers that we have with us to join us up here, if you would.
Dr Chris Lewin of the University of Edinburgh and Dr Erin McNulty at University College Cork, with the official launch of an edition focusing on the Manx Gaelic of the International Journal of the Sociology of Language, founded by Joshua Fishman in 1974. There was also an interesting panel discussion, which we'll return to in a future edition of Shiaght Laa. Apart from their joint foreword and articles by Chris and Erin themselves, there's a contribution from Fiona McArdle and Ruth Kegan-Gell of Culture Vannin, and another by Nicola Toombs of Yn Chruinnaght Vannin, Manx National Heritage. Other papers are by Irish academic based in Aberystwyth, Dr Ben O'Kelly, Professor at the University of Galway, Taig O'Heffernan, who's visited the island and given talks on his research into Manx language matters, and Professor Julia Salabank of the School of Oriental and African Studies of the University of London. Julia has visited the island on a number of occasions, including to give a Ned Madrill lecture at the Cush a few years ago. As Chris Lewin mentioned, there's open access to this and other editions of the International Journal of the Sociology of Language online, and you can download PDFs of all the papers. Now for those other diary dates. The Villa Marina Arcade is home to a 10-ton 1929 Wurlitzer organ. It has 754 pipes in all, each one of which is individually tuned, and it also has percussion instruments. So it has chimes, a xylophone, glockenspiel, tambourine and drums. Next Wednesday, the 19th of August, there will be a lunchtime concert presented by the Isle of Man Arts Council as part of its Arts in the Arcade summer season of concerts. And that will be starting at 1 o'clock, when the Wurlitzer will be shown off by Stephen Austin. Originally from Taplow in Buckinghamshire, Stephen moved to Blackpool, where he was a founder member of the Blackpool Keyboard Club for Organists, and is in demand, travelling round to give concerts on theatre organs throughout Britain. And he'll be putting the Isle of Man Arts Council's Wurlitzer through its paces at the Villa Marina Arcade at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 19th of August. Also in Douglas later on that day, Wednesday the 19th of August, St Thomas's Church Wednesday evening concerts present the Summer Singers. They're a community choir based in Ramsey. With their conductor Sue Kinraid, the Summer Singers will be giving a concert in St Thomas's Church in Douglas at 7:45 p.m. next Wednesday. Admission to the concert is free, but a donation towards the work of the church would be welcomed. And after the concert you can enjoy refreshments, including cake, and a chat with members of the Summer Singers and other concert goers.
Trefas yn glas yn Llyna a chormach dwbl, Jane Eris lio Edinburgh Chruinnaght a chesioliach Chynne, dim re yn Dr Chris Lewin, drawi cwy nôd yn ei blaen na Gilgaton. As cochonald risien, ta taishman ysgol cummels a tai tash the ons dúlish. Ruth Keggin-Gell and Nicola Toombs took part in the panel discussion after the launch of the International Journal of the Sociology of Language, and they were responsible, with Nicola as curator for Erin Chruinnaght Vanning, and with Ruth as Yn Chruinnaght, Culture Vanning's Manx Language Development Officer, for putting together an interactive exhibition celebrating the Manx language and its rich culture. And you can visit that every day at the Manx Museum in Douglas, which is open between 9:30 and 4:30. There's still a couple of more months for it to go.
Tá sin cúir agus a chléir seo the Shiaght Laa. That's it from Shiaght Laa this week. So from me, Fiona McArdle, Slán Liú.